Alright fellas, so this is what we have today. We have a charging system failure on this 2008 Chevy Uplander. Now I think what I saw on the internet is you have to either drop the engine or take these mounts off and twist her forward. I'm not going to do that because that takes a lot more time than what I got. So I'm going to take this fuse box out, this bar out, maybe even the battery out, and I'm going to take this washer fluid thing out and the wiper motor right there, and then slide it all through there. So I'll show you how I do it. First thing you want to do is take this cover off. All you got to do is twist the oil thing out. There are a couple of pins in here on the back that this sets in that you have to pop it off of. And now we have a place to hold all of our tools and nuts and bolts and whatever right there. Thanks, GM. Pop the fuse panel cover off. There's two nuts right here. I believe they're 10mm. Yep, they're 10mm. These bolts on this cross member here, those are 13mm. I need a wobble to get in there and get that bolt out that's holding the battery in. You also want to disconnect the battery. There you go. Bolt and wedge out. Now you can get the battery out. Now there'll be 3 bolts holding this in, and you'll have to also disconnect your wire connectors and then disconnect the lines for the fluid. You'll also want to disconnect this wire connector to the wiper motor. And yeah, it's going to take a pry bar, and you're going to be prying on plastic, so be gentle. This wiper motor right here is a T30. I recommend some kind of bit ratchet to get in there, unless you have some L keys, because there's not a lot of clearance there for a regular ratchet. And then you'll also need a 3/8 square for the serpentine belt tensioner that's on the back bottom of the engine right underneath the alternator. You will also need to take this wiper arm off. You gotta hold the wiper to break it loose, and then you're good. There's a little square hole in that tensioning thing. See where the head of that ratchet is? Right there. And that's where your hole is for your tensioner. And pull up on it like you're tightening. That'll pop that belt off. All you want to do is take the belt off of the alternator. Don't take the whole thing apart. Now we're going to take out the bolts. There's going to be 1 here on the front and 2 on the back of this alternator. And just so you know, I'm using straight ratcheting wrenches. Now these are Cobalt gearless, but you know, if you had gear wrench or whatever, Craftsman, as long as they're straight and flat, they're not angled, you'll be able to get them in there. That right there is how the bolts in the back go. So this one's the front that comes in from the side. This one is the one closest to you, and this one with the little stud on the top is the one in the very back of the alternator. You're also going to have to remove this pulley right here and able to get that alternator through there. If not, it'll hang up. So you got to remove that pulley there too. I was trying this earlier to get it off of the back. If you have this set up, it'll work also. It's the 3/8 1/4 handle. It's Duralast from AutoZone, like 72 tooth. Plugs right into a 3/8 socket. So little bitty handle, great big old socket. Works. There's the pulley. It does have a washer on the back. It's just a idler pulley. And once you get that done, you pull it right out. Make sure you take these this nut off, or you'll have a hard time getting that connector back on there. Alright, when you get that in, went ahead and did the post first. Right there, you can see the post. That's the post I did. Then I'm going to clip the wire in. Then I'm going to put the bolts in for the alternator. Just gives you a little bit more wiggle room. Alright, and this is what I used. Serpentine belt tool. You can get by with a long handled ratchet as long as it's 3/8. I used a fairly long pry bar for those pumps in the windshield washer fluid. Players slip joints. These are the fan pliers because I don't use regular slip joints anymore. I use these. Had a really fine tooth 1/4 inch ratchet with like a 6/6 extension for the bolt on the back of the alternator. Ratchet with a T30. Pocket screwdriver. A Shortwell 10mm for the windshield washer tank, and it had to have a little extension also. 15mm straight ratcheting wrench. This one's gearless, but you can use one that's geared. Regular 3/8 ratchet. 15mm reverse ratcheting. The bend in it works. Add a midget 10 for the alternator on the back. I have one of these 3/8 anvil and a 1/4 inch body ratchets. Those come in nice and handy on those back bolts. On the alternator, of course, 15mm socket, 13mm socket, midget 13mm, 13mm reverse ratcheting, 10mm reverse ratcheting, 12-inch extension with a 13mm. You can get by with a shorter one. I use this for the battery hold down, so it needs to be kind of long. And a 10-inch extension with a 10mm, and of course, pocket flashlight. Oh, and a lot of it was done with the air ratchet too. So if you have one, use it. If you don't, you can get by with a regular ratchet. But as always, like, comment, share, subscribe. Love, hate, hardknocksforge@gmail.com. Don't send me any panties because they never fit.